Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Can everybody see me? This is my first time doing this, so I don't know exactly how it works, but I will give it a few minutes before I get started. Um, so just bear with me, okay? Did we have the screen last time, or was it the full thing? Okay. Okay, I'm gonna give it one more minute, and then we're gonna get started, okay? Okay, we're gonna go ahead and start, okay? So Ken is here with me. He's gonna be helping with the presentation, and so before I get started, as you guys know, I want to address the COVID-19 situation, and it's pretty serious. So I think that we all need to do our part, and we all need to stay home. The current statistics say that there's over 800,000 people infected. In fact, there's 843,891 infected in the US, and there's 46,859 deaths in the United States. Here in San Antonio, we have 1,126 infected with 39 deaths. So it's a serious situation. Please stay home, and that's why we chose to do this presentation, bring you the Orchid Society information to you. So we're going to get started. Hope you enjoy my presentation. My presentation is called What is an Orchid? Yeah. Go ahead. Thank you. Can we get the other light, please? Thanks. Okay, everyone. So here's the first slide. And the first slide says, what is an orchid? So to you guys, what comes to mind when you're asked what is an orchid? Go ahead. So this is you thinking, what is an orchid? Go ahead. So some of you guys are thinking, well, it's a plant with pretty flowers. Some of you are thinking it's a living thing. Others are thinking, well, clearly it's not an animal. And you're right. Whatever you thought, if it's one of these, you're correct. It's not an animal, it's a living thing, and it's a plant with pretty flowers. Okay? So let me go into taxonomy. The reason we understand plants and orchids in particular is because of the way we classify them and the way we organize similarities to group them and understand them more in detail. So by doing that, Carol Orozco is present. Oh, nobody's there. Only one person's there. Should I start again?
No, keep going.
Okay, so I'm going to continue. Hi, Carol. Can you hear me? So, taxonomy is a branch of science that describes, identifies, names, and classifies organisms. And the way you do that is by the process of elimination based on information that you already know, or by the process of inclusion based on similar characteristics. Go ahead. Okay, next, this slide, okay, why is it moving? Okay, this is a picture of Carl Linnaeus, and he was a Swedish botanist, zoologist, and physician who formalized binomial nomenclature, and he's the father of modern taxonomy. Go ahead. Now, on this slide, you're going to see that the first findings about how he classified organisms was in these 5 kingdoms. There is the protist, the monera, the fungi, plants, and the animals. So here, by process of elimination, we're going to be concentrating on the plants. Go ahead. So, what is a plant? The characteristics of a plant is that it's a living organism. It makes its own food because it has chlorophyll, and it reproduces. Those are characteristics of a living plant. Go ahead. Okay. To further classify the orchid category, you're going to see that the plant kingdom comprises of mosses, ferns, gymnosperms, and of course, the flowering plants, which this is what we're classifying. So an orchid is not this. An orchid is a flowering plant. Go ahead. Okay, here is a diagram that shows the taxonomy classification, and it starts from the kingdom, then it goes to phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. And what this does, it groups organisms together. And what it does is, when you go up in the highest setting, you increasing numbers, but when you go down, you become more specific. So you increase the similarities, so they're more similar, but yet you decrease the numbers. So there's less of them when you're talking about species. Kingdom is plantae, all the plants. When you're talking about family, orchids. The genus, it could be a Dendrobium, and then species is the more specialized. Okay, go ahead. Now the question is, what is a flower? Well, a flower is a collection of modified leaves that are usually brightly colored to attract pollinators. Here's an example of a lily and a daisy. So what do flowers or flowering plants have? They have petals, sepals, the reproductive organs, and they're sometimes scented. These are the characteristics of flowers. Hi, Rocky. Okay. So, thanks for joining. Okay, next slide, please. So, when we're talking about a non-orchid flower, you're going to see that there's the sepals in the bottom. You have the petals that go around it. And you have the reproductive parts, which is the filament and the anther for the male, and the ovary and the stigma at the top. This is a non-orchid flower. Go ahead. And the sepals, we're going to talk about the sepals. The sepals are these things right here, and they hold together the flower. They're usually green in non-orchid flowers, and they function as protection for the flower when it's emerging as a bud, and it also supports the petals, so it cups them when the petals open. Okay, next slide, please. So this is a simplified version of the other slide that you saw with the male and female parts. So here you're going to see that this whole thing is the stamen, which is the male part, and this whole thing is the female part. So go ahead. What makes orchids different from other plants is these two things right here. You have a lip and you have the column. Over here in a lily, you're going to have the filament, the anther, and the stigma is in the middle. So this makes them different. But if you notice, both lilies and orchids are similar because they're both have petals in groups of threes. So you have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Go ahead. Okay. Now, the reproductive parts of the orchid have fused together. So what you have here, the female part, or the pistil in a non-orchid plant, along with the pollinia, the stamens, they have fused together to form this structure called the column. So you're going to have the stigma here and the pollinia are on top. So basically you have both in a modified structure called the column. Can you guys hear me okay? I guess. Okay, well, moving on. If you guys have any questions, let me know, or we could just wait to the end. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, the general characteristics of orchids is that most are epiphytes, some are lithophytes, and there's a few terrestrials. Now, another characteristic is that they have bilateral symmetry. They have a specialized petal called the lip, and most flowers are supinate, which means they're upside down, and they have few stamens and the stigma into the column. Okay, next slide, please. So here's an example of bilateral symmetry. If you put a mirror here and block this side, and you see that this side will match this side on the mirror, and if you put it on this side, you're going to have the same reflection of this side to this side, making it have bilateral symmetry compared to other plants where they have radial symmetry. So this is a characteristics of orchids. Go ahead, next slide. Now, what makes it bilateral is the lip, because without this lip, if it was just a regular petal, it would be radial symmetry, because at any way you cross it or put the mirror or divide it, you're going to see an exact same image. But with this lip here, you force it to only have bilateral symmetry, because it doesn't work this way and it doesn't work this way. It only works if you cut it right in the middle, and makes it predominantly, in most orchids it's down, so it makes it this look down and this is up, and that's how we determine bilateral symmetry, because we look at it up and down. Okay, now the next slide, please. Okay, here's more examples of lips. This is a cymbidium, or the boat orchid. and you can see that the lip is very modified. Go ahead. Here's another lip example on a Dendrobium. You see that the lip is short as far as width, but it encloses the column, so you can hardly see it back there. Go ahead. Now here's other examples of modified lips. You're going to have an oncidium, big lip, and most oncidiums are known as the dancing lady orchid. You're going to have a Digbyana. See how the lip is big and centralized, and it has the frilliness or the hairs on the lip. The slipper orchid or the Paphiopedilum, it has the modified lip that looks like a slipper. There you go. Those are examples of different kind of lips. Go ahead. Okay, these are the flower parts. The flower parts you're going to have, when you look at a flower, you're going to see that the first two things that you see in front of you are the petals, the two petals, and then the lip, which is also a petal. So you're going to have petal, petal, petal. And then in the back, you're going to have a sepal, and another sepal. Go ahead. So the sequence, so that you can remember them, is going to be in the front, is going to be petal, 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 and then in the back is sepal, sepal, sepal. Go ahead. Okay, this is the layout. I made it so that you can see this triangle right here. I made it green so that it corresponds with this flower over here. So if you look in the back, it's green too. So the ones in the back are going to be the sepals. Okay, go ahead. And the ones in the front are going to be the petal. So it's petal, petal, and petal. Okay, hold on. We can't see that over there. Why can't we see it? Okay, well, sorry guys. Sorry that you can't see that over there, but it's just petal. Okay, so you have petal, petal, and petal. Go ahead. So when you look at this plant, this is a Paphiopedilum. When you look at this plant, you're like, well, I see petal, 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 and I only see sepal, but where's the other sepal? Well, here it is. The two lateral sepals have fused in the back. So you have one going this way, and you have the other one going this way behind the lip. So the same pattern stays there. It just modified, and it makes the flower look completely different. Okay, go ahead. Okay, now resupinate. Resupinate means that it means that it turned upside down, basically. So when a cattleya comes out, I don't know if you can see this, but when the cattleya comes out, it comes out like this, and then it twists, and then it goes upside down like that. So that's what resupinate means. So cattleyas have this. So since we're used to seeing this as down, we tend to think of it that this is the right way, but they're really upside down. So this flower is upside down, technically, but it looks right side up. Okay, and the next one. Now here's an example of a non-resupinate orchid. And what it does, when it comes out, it just comes straight out and it opens, and you have the dorsal, the lip in the top. So it makes it look upside down, but it's really right side up. So you have petal, 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 and then you have sepal, sepal, and sepal over there. Go ahead. Okay. The sepals in orchids. Okay. Sepals in orchids have serve, or they're part of the flower versus in other plants. In other plants, they're usually out of sight and in the back. But in lilies, you can see them as part of the flower, and so with orchids. So when you look at this flower, the whole flower has a sepal, 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 and it has a petal, petal, and petal. Even though it's real tiny, it's still here. So the whole, in this kind of flower, both the sepals and the petal are part of the flower. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, when you're talking about orchid genera, there's roughly at least 763 genera of orchids. So there's a lot. So that's a nice fact to know. Go ahead. Now, when you're talking about species and hybrids, that's when it gets really confusing. Not confusing, but you have a lot of numbers because of the hybridizations. You're gonna there's roughly about 30,000 species and over 100,000 hybrids. So there's a lot of orchids out there. So another characteristic of them is that they're very adaptable. They grow everywhere except Antarctica, except desert or permanent snowfields. And they started growing back 76 to 84 million years ago during the late Cretaceous. That's when they started showing up. Next slide, please. Now, the different types of orchids, there's three. There's epiphytes, there's lithophytes, and then there's terrestrials. For epiphytes, they grow above ground. They're not parasitic, and they get their nutrients and water from the air. Over there, you see the picture of the roots from a vanda. So that a vanda would be a great example of an epiphyte. Next slide, please. For a lithophyte is a plant that lives on rocks. So here you have a what looks like a Brassavola nodosa, and it's on a rock. So there you go. Next slide, please. The next type of orchid is a terrestrial. So it's a plant that grows in the ground. Examples, this is a Dendrobium speciosum, but orchids that grow on the ground can be, that are terrestrials, are Paphipetalums, Calanthes, you have Habanarias, you have Plantantheras, you have Peristerias. All those orchids are terrestrials. Next slide, please. Now, click it again. Now, this is examples of Phalaenopsis. And we all know what Phalaenopsis is. Basically, it's the moth orchid. And thanks to hybridization, we have rounder and full of flowers with different spottings and different types of lips. And we also have a huge variety of flowers, number of flowers, depending on what the plant was hybridized with. Okay, next slide, please. Now, these are examples of cattleyas. The cattleyas are known as the corsage orchids because people made corsages out of these for weddings, Mother's Days, and stuff like that. Nice celebrations. Go ahead. Now, this one is the Dendrobium. And usually there's four types, I think 4 types of Dendrobiums. You have your Candendrobiums, the deciduous Dendrobium, you have your Australian Dendrobiums, and then you have your Latoria Dendrobiums. So these are very pretty because they're colorful. Next slide, please. Now this is the Oncidiums, and Oncidiums are what are they called? See if you can answer that question. They're known as the dancing lady orchid. So just think of a dancing lady, and there you go. This is a dress, and then she's dancing. So that's a dancing lady orchid. Okay, next one. Now these are the Paphiopedilums, and we all know that what makes them distinct is that A, they're terrestrial, and B, they have a modified lip that's shaped into like a slipper or a bucket, depending on how you see it. Okay, next slide, please. And these are your Vandas. So we all know Vandas. They have their epiphytes, and they're very colorful. And the thing about them is that on all of the Vandas, you're going to have a very small to almost a non-existent lip, but it's still there. Okay. What's the other one? Next slide, please. Oh, this is the end of the presentation. You know us, the San Antonio Orchid Society. We meet on Thursday, the third Thursday of the month, from 7 to 9 p.m. And we're doing live presentations now because of COVID-19. So our activities, when this is all over, will include orchid raffles, show and tell, growers group meeting, Facebook group, and our annual auction. And I'm the point of contact. Any questions? Do you guys have any questions? How long was that?
About half an hour.
29 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we get the light, please?
Yes.
Can we get
Yeah, I will.
Okay, guys. Hi. This is our first time doing this, so I don't know how it works, but it worked, right? So I see only Carol, Roscoe, and Rocky. Carol and Rocky, thank you so much for spending time out of your busy schedule to learn about orchids. And I know I saw you guys come in a little bit after I had started the presentation, not knowing who was going to be in here. So what I said as my introduction was that we need to take COVID-19 very serious. And what I said was that there's 843,891 cases in the U.S., and there's 46,859 deaths in the United States. Here in San Antonio, we have 1,126 infected people and 39 deaths. So Ken and I have made a pact to stay home. So I hope you guys stay home, stay safe. Do you guys have any questions? No, because you guys are experts. You guys already know everything. But I want to, before we close, I want to do a show and tell. So I want to show my Paphiopedilum, or our Paphiopedilum. What do you think? This is a Paphiopedilum St. Swithin. So there you go. I have 4 flowers on it, and St. Swithin is a hybrid between Roswellianum and Philippinensis. So Philippinensis is, I call it the yellow one because he has the yellow. So, and the Roswellianum is the one with the big petals going sideways. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and I don't have any other announcements other than, would you guys like for us to do another live presentation? You don't have to answer me now. You could just email me or send it on Facebook. Um, but please stay home and stay safe. Is there anything you want to say? Okay, well, thanks for watching, everyone. Stay safe. Bye bye. Okay.